first your reaction to the story, the video involved at Marcy Correctional Facility, and how did you feel about it?
Well, hearing about the incident last week, and then watching the video later in the week, it was incredibly saddening, very frustrating, to see that, and to initially hear about, the death of Mr. Brooks, at Marcy. Unfortunately, it's not something that, when we heard about the incident, it was not something that was particularly surprising, to us, at the Correctional Association, just because, we have, unfortunately hear about, incidences, where people are claiming, some type of assault or some type of abuse, fairly often. And 2 years ago, when we did visit Marcy Correctional Facility, we did, hear a large amount of incarcerated individuals, tell us about, fear of, a use of force from staff. Very sad, news, very frustrating, for us to hear at CANY. And unfortunately, not surprising due to history, of the prison.
What stuck out? You just mentioned there were the interviews you did. You spoke with individuals. I guess what stuck out from that 2022 visit to you, that obviously alerted you that there were some issues here?
Well, there was a large, degree of people who answered, yes to a question that we ask on monitoring visits, saying, have you seen, experienced, type of physical abuse or sexual abuse or assault? Outside of the large degree of people who said yes to in response to that question, I think some of the, specific things that people told us on that monitoring visit, really stand out, where people are using words like rampant, abuse. They're saying that when they come into the prison, that they're being told that this is a hands-on facility. And just hearing, a large amount of people, using those types of descriptions, to characterize the environment that they're living in, was difficult to hear.
Yeah. From what I had read in the report, 80% said they were subject to verbal, physical, sexual abuse. That's the note I had. Does that sound right to you?
Yes.
And
Yes.
2/3 said it was racial in nature.
Yeah. So another thing, that we noticed where was in that report specifically, was people being, discriminated against, for example, going to the mess hall, because of, having like cornrows in their hair, or a different type of, like their hair that might be like a cultural reason, for someone to be wearing hair in a certain way, and then being told that that's not the correct way to wear their hair when they're going to the mess hall, and then being denied access to the mess hall, and then skipping a meal, thereafter. But that's one of the, I guess, like very specific examples of how, that racial abuse, and discrimination could come up, in practice. Yeah.
And then another aspect I thought stuck out, I'm sure it did to you as well. 33 of 35 said the grievance process wasn't fair. 31 of 33 said the disciplinary system wasn't fair. What did you make of that?
Yeah. So, we have a larger report, on, the grievance process, and then reports on the implementation of the HALT law. Something that we, learned, as part of those reports are, people are particularly fearful of, retaliation for filing a grievance, and, believe that sometimes that retaliation, I mean, could come in the form of a disciplinary sanction. It could come in other ways, as well. But, the grievance system, it was essentially created, as a way for the administration and the folks operating in prison to be responsive to people's grievances and their concerns in an effort to alleviate these concerns before they become something bigger or snowball into something else. And if people are fearful of using that system that's designed to address concerns, because that system could be leading to a worse outcome in the sense of retaliation. All right, it raises this larger question as to what exactly is happening to the things that people are concerned about, and how can they be if the system designed to address the concerns is having this effect where it's might be making the situation worse. What's happening to the concerns of incarcerated people at the prison? So it's I think this incident calls to question a lot of the calls into question a lot of the underlying issues that we see regularly in prisons, as to how is the grievance process operating, how is the disciplinary process operating, is it transparent, is it fair? We have a slate of recommendations, that we issue each year directly to the department, and that we issue each year to the legislature, and it touches on many different things. It touches on the grievance process, it touches on disciplinary, it touches on access to medical. So taking a look at all of those things and how they come together to create an environment in a prison is something that we're hopeful that people seriously look at now to help improve the environment.
From speaking with individuals that are formerly incarcerated over the past few days, they weren't necessarily at Marcy, so they experienced a lot of the same things where they were. How pervasive is this beyond Marcy Correctional Facility from the work you've done?
So we've seen it. We've seen similar levels of people reporting uses of force from staff and a fear of retaliation from staff in different places across the system. I mean, at Bear Hill Correctional Facility, as an example, is a place that we went to in the beginning of 2022. And similarly, it was a medium security prison that's close to the Canadian border, and where there were widespread reports from incarcerated individuals about assaults from staff and abuse from staff. In the grievance report that we issued, likewise, people are afraid to file these grievances because of concerns around retaliation, and that was a system-wide report. So it is something that is seen at different degrees at each of the prisons, with some of them being just significantly worse, Marcy being one of them, where you're hearing just widespread reports of people alleging uses of force. I want to say also, in response to that question specifically, that there's also a lack of stationary cameras and body-worn cameras in operation and in use across the system. So about a quarter of the prisons are currently using body-worn cameras, and there's a whole slate of prisons that still need to be equipped with stationary cameras. So we're not witnessing these incidents when they happen. We're going in and we're speaking to people, and people are telling us about them. But having these, I guess, having the use of body-worn cameras and having stationary cameras in place could, one, give us a better picture of when these incidents do happen and the frequency by which they're happening, but two, also act as a deterrent in the future. So to say that that what we hear about as far as assaults and abuse differs from place to place, but a big part of it is there is just a lack of an ability to better understand what's happening in prisons because of the lack of cameras and because of the lack of I guess, oversight and transparency into the day-to-day operations.
I mean, there's been some reaction to this that say, well, we people are listening to these accounts from formerly incarcerated people. They watch the video. They said, well, sometimes this use of force is necessary for these COs to, have control of the situation. What do you make of that argument in this situation?
I think after watching the video that was released by the Attorney General, it's very difficult to say that the officers and the staff in that video needed to use the force that's being seen in that video. I think it speaks for itself.
Yeah. So you issued, and back to the report in 2022, you issued recommendations out of that. One of those was on the Inspector General to investigate. Did they, that office?
We're not aware of any investigation by the Attorney General, by the Inspector General following the issuance of that report. I believe that in response to a similar call that we made when we visited Bear Hill Correctional Facility, that the Inspector General did take a look into it, but not sure of how large of an investigation it was.
Do you have a stance on that legislation by Senator Salazar that would allow the Inspector General to have oversight into situations, I think it was sexual assault and investigate docs and things of that nature?
Yes, we that legislation is part of the Correctional Association's policy agenda, and right, we're in support of that bill. We're in support of bringing in the Division of Human Rights to take a look at human rights related concerns. And there's also another bill that allows the Attorney General to investigate cases where there have been serious injuries, in addition to cases where there's been a death when there's a peace officer or a police officer. So, yes, we're large proponents of like a more transparency, more oversight for accountability in the system.
Would someone mention to me an unannounced visit would go a long way? Is that something that you think would help?
Yes, we a good practice in oversight is being able to go to right the places that you're providing oversight for. So for the Correctional Association, the state prisons, without notice. We currently have to provide a 72-hour notice prior to engaging on a monitoring visit to a state prison. And yes, I mean, not to not to like ambush people at the prison, but right, timeliness means a lot, and being able to go right immediately and in response to something would be significant. And there is legislation pending in the Senate and Assembly that would allow CANY to do that.
Did docs implement any of the recommendations you put forth in 2022? 2023, I should say.
From the Marcy report?
Yeah.
So we asked for the department to investigate, which would be through OSI. And that's one of the recommendations in the report. We unfortunately don't get a lot of insight into the status of an investigation and to the level of, to the degree that something is being investigated by the department. So we did report it right to OSI, but I'm unsure of right to the degree of which that OSI investigation occurred and how deep it went. I mean, considering right 2 years later, right, that we're looking at right, a video where Mr. Brooks was right, severely assaulted. That right, if there was an investigation, right, it didn't right get to sort of the bottom of it.
That frustrating at all to know that you kind of said here's the issue. Can we help? Can we do something to promote a change here? And then we saw the outcome, right, of the lack of, I guess, action there.
Yeah, it is frustrating. And it's sad that right, there's individuals who are right sounding the alarm to us and telling us when we're going on these prison visits that there are these serious concerns about the way people are being treated, as well as right access to medical, access to programs, right, other things that are affecting people's day-to-day lives. And right, we issue this reporting um, and um, and disseminate information to the public in the hope that there will be action on things that could improve right, conditions in prisons for incarcerated people, for the people working there too, and to right sound the alarm and not have significant action taken is very frustrating. Right, despite like the tragedies we see and right the death of incarcerated individuals and the death of Mr. Brooks. Like we hope that right people do right start paying attention and right understand the gravity of help that right that the state prisons need to do to change. So right, it's good to see right, a lot of legislators issuing statements. It's good to see the governor and the attorney general being very responsive to what we're all seeing in the video. But yeah, it's frustrating and sad that right, it takes the degree it takes a certain amount for people to take notice as to the conditions in the prisons.
The people I've spoken with talk about a culture that they see here of abuse. And I think that's something that you've heard as well. Why do you think this exists, this dynamic right now?
Well, right, to speak to, not the culture of a specific place or right, of certain individuals, but the state prison system is conceptually incredibly old. We're the oldest operating prison in North America is Auburn Correctional Facility. So you're looking at right places that were built very far away from the major population centers of the state, places that have a limited transparency into them, limited means for outside entities to provide oversight to get a better understanding of the dynamics behind right each of these places. Right, and like what we see is that without oversight and without having right other entities able to right provide accountability or provide a means for accountability, in state prisons that right things could go right off the rails, off the tracks. Right, in the sense that these places are very far away. Right, there might be a regular operation sort of in place that could span like long time periods. So bringing in change, bringing in transparency, and really bringing in oversight could go a long way towards deterring and just allowing other folks to better understand why right prisons might be culturally one way or another.
So how you mentioned some legislation earlier. How do you change that?
Well, we so one independent oversight could go a long way, right? So having people from different parts of the state, right, going into prisons, talking to folks, getting access to data, making that data public could go a long way towards right, drawing connections between people who are in Albany or New York City or Rochester and Buffalo and people who are in the prisons and want to get a better understanding of what's happening in the prisons. So right, we're proponents of right the Correctional Association of New York being able to go in without providing additional notice, and to be able to get access to data on a regular basis that we can make available to policymakers and to the public. The second piece is right, allowing other investigatory bodies right, access to and the ability to investigate wrongdoing within the state prison. So bringing in, empowering the Attorney General's office to be able to look at right, severe injuries in addition to deaths in custody. Right, empowering the Inspector General's office to look at sexual assault, the Division of Human Rights to look at human rights complaints. And then the third piece would be, bringing stationary cameras and body cameras into prisons, which would really give right, a view of when something happens, and right, the response from staff, and to really right, witness and see